When I was 22, I lived in a semi-hip, semi-sketchy part of Brooklyn known as South Williamsburg. I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with a lesbian roommate named Tony. We didn't get along very well, and I regularly went on dates with guys I met online. Most of these dates were nothing to post online about, but then there was the time I met Dave. Dave and I agreed to meet for a few drinks at my favorite bar, which was called Barcade. This bar was amazing because it had dozens of American microbrews on tap, and also because the entire space was filled with 80s arcade games which were still a quarter to play. And I'm talking Miss Pac-Man, Galaga, Space Invaders, 1942, Tapper, my favorite, Gauntlet, you name it. What I didn't realize is the decision to meet at this particular bar possibly saved my life. So I met him at Barcade, ordered a beer, cashed in $2 in quarters, and challenged him to a few games. We started out having fun, playing in turns and cheering the other on, but after a few rounds of Punch-Out, he started getting antsy. A lot of, "Do you want to take this back to my place?" and "Let's get out of here," etc. I blew him off and didn't think anything of it at first, since I still had quite a few quarters left and just thought he was anxious to get in my pants. I finished my first beer and ordered a second, which is usually my limit for sobriety. Then my favorite game opened up, and I excitedly ran over for it, put a quarter in, and I sucked. I just couldn't time anything correctly. I kept missing the cues. I didn't make it past the first round. This was weird, since I pretty much lived on this game and beat everyone I challenged on it. When I mentioned with wounded pride that I'm normally not this bad after only one beer, he started to get even more insistent. "No, seriously, let's go. This place is too crowded for good conversation. Let's go someplace quieter." I didn't understand, since we'd only been there for like half an hour, and I was interested in having some fun, but I also wanted to get to know him first. I again insisted on using up my quarters, of which I had only 2 left. I put another one in the game, determined to kick his ass, and this time, not only could I not make it past the first round, but I had trouble even holding on to the joystick correctly. This was when I started putting 2 and 2 together. I realized I was in a really bad situation and needed to play it cool, so I did what any normal 22-year-old would do. I excused myself to the bathroom and proceeded to flip the fuck out. I called my roommate and begged her to come and get me. We only lived a few blocks away, but she was at her girlfriend's house in Park Slope, a 15-minute cab ride, and she was in the middle of a date. I begged her and offered to pay for the next date, plus the cost of the cab ride, and finally she agreed to come get me. While I waited, I just hung out in the bathroom, getting more and more freaked out, losing more and more of my fine motor skills as the minutes went by. As women came into the bathroom, I kept asking them to check if he was still there. For the first 20 minutes, he was. After that, people kept coming back saying he was gone. I still didn't feel safe leaving the bathroom though. I stayed there on the phone with my friend in North Carolina, waiting for Tony to show up. After an hour, she walked in and carried me out of the bar. I was able to walk with assistance, so it was more like leaning carry, if you can follow me here. She was still upset about me interrupting her date though, so instead of taking me back to the apartment, she took me to a gay bar nearby, the Metropolitan. I got parked on a chair for the next hour while she partied with some friends, I think. Honestly, my memory of this is a little hazy. I know we were there. All I remember next is waking up in my bed in the middle of the night, but having crazy cramps and spasms all over my body and not being able to control it. Then, I don't remember anything else until the next morning, where my only remaining symptom was a really bad headache. I never heard from Dave again, although I did get a phone call 2 days later from a blocked number where a woman yelled epithets and cursed at me for 30 seconds before threatening to kill me and hanging up. I don't know why, but I'm convinced the two events are connected. Either way, that's my story. I was drugged, but not raped, and I'm forever thankful.
Number 2.
I grew up next door to this kid. He was a typical little boy, and I was a typical little girl, but we found common ground with less gendered toys like Lego and eventually PlayStation. We spent almost every afternoon together from age 3 to 12. My family moved to another state after that, and we lost touch. Even with the lens of childhood innocence in place, I feel the need to emphasize that his family were, give or take, normal and fairly affluent. Years went by. I'm in my 20s now. I usually ignore Facebook friend requests from people I don't see on a regular basis, but I made an exception for Luke, my childhood friend. He messaged me out of the blue and told me that he still lived in the same city, in the same exact house, on the street we grew up. That was a little odd, sure, but the memories came flooding back. Luke and I had a few conversations about Elder Scrolls and Marvel movies and Formula One. His only profile pictures were of his car and his dog, and all his Facebook posts that I could see were about gaming. So, I had no idea what he looked like and just figured we had stuff in common. The tone of our conversations changed. I wrote off the initial inappropriate comments as jokes, bad humor, and when it came to his flirting, I told him straight up that I wasn't looking for a date or to sleep around with anyone. He asked me out several times anyway and sent me a lot of Facebook event invites to parties at his house. He didn't seem to be inviting many, if any, other women. Just me and a bunch of guys. Basically, he had no idea how to make a prospective female friend feel comfortable or safe entering his social circle. There was no way I'd go over to his house, but eventually he wore me down with nostalgia and I agreed to catch up with him for a drink as friends. The non-date rolled around on a Friday evening pretty early. I waited to meet him on a busy street that we were both familiar with. There are a lot of bars in that area, so I wasn't worried we'd lack options. When Luke arrived, I suddenly understood why he didn't post pictures of himself on Facebook. For reference, I'm 5 foot 98 pounds only because I was an extremely skinny fat at the time. No muscle on me at all. Luke towered over me by at least a foot. I'm so close to the ground anyway that I have trouble estimating height. He was about 50 pounds overweight, just a big guy in general, with a shaved head and covered in what looked like biker tattoos. I didn't want to judge on sight since I have friends who are really into alternative fashion. I also know some metal fans with objectively scary tattoos and they're the nicest people in the world, so, well, I was surprised, but not freaked out. I couldn't identify the tattoos for what they were. Later the same night, he lifted his shirt to show me some more obvious ink. He takes the initiative and says he's leading me to his favorite place. It's a short walk and down some stairs to a bar that I don't recognize at all, and although it's a Friday night, the place is completely dead. We're the only people there, aside from the bartender. We order a couple of drinks and I don't let him pay for mine. When I'm out with friends, I always buy my own drinks and I wanted to emphasize that this wasn't a date. Even if it had been, I would have paid for myself because I don't like accepting gifts on a first date. I want to sound out how I click with that person and I don't want anyone to try and use a bar bill or a meal as leverage with me. It does happen. I don't want to owe strangers anything, not a smile, not a conversation, nothing. I already wasn't 100% confident I'd even feel safe sipping this drink. Over the course of that one drink, Luke starts telling me his twisted values in detail. It turns out that those were genuine neo-Nazi tattoos, and one of the reasons he'd wanted to ask me out was because he knew my family and that we were, and I'm quoting here, really white. Then he started complaining about how the last girl he took out was part black and how he found out. You can probably guess that he didn't say black. I was beyond repulsed by this point. He was getting agitated just talking without me saying much at all, and that was scaring me. Honestly, I did want to explode on him, but I know that anger makes people like him get even more hostile. I was afraid to fan the flames, so I kept neutral and answered as calmly as possible. I told him that I'm not racist if I can help it, and that I didn't agree with him about any of this, and I didn't know anyone who would, including his own parents, and I reminded him again that this was not a date. Then, double the asshole, real prince of a guy, he says,
"Girls always say no to me until they say yes."
I started questioning if it was real or not. There was a part of me that thought it was all a practical joke. We were at a booth, not sitting at the bar counter, so he was basically spouting all of this hateful shit with complete impunity. I had the sudden thought that if other people could only hear the crap coming out of his mouth, he'd get kicked into a fine paste. I felt so alone. He'd set us up so that my handbag was under his jacket, on his side, next to him, instead of next to me. I would need to reach over him to get it and leave. I probably sat through an hour of him nursing that one drink, empty glass soon enough, and explaining his thoughts on life. In a way, it was just pathetic because his ideas didn't seem thought out, and you could tell no one usually listened to him for as long as I'd been listening. He couldn't begin to justify himself. He was getting worked up and aggressive in a way that's hard to describe. I wouldn't say he was getting off on making me uncomfortable, but there was probably something about having an audience who didn't seem to know how to shut him down or escape. I was thinking about exit strategies. I know you can't fight hate with hate, so I just kept telling him in a calm way that I completely disagreed with him. He threw in a couple dumbass points against feminism too, with the implication that I didn't have the right to contradict him. He also tried to make me confess to hating Indians, like he could bring me around to his way of thinking, and then convince me to date him once we had that in common. That's when the touching started. He moved his hand up my arm and around my back, and I shrugged him off. The second or third time I moved away from him, trying to touch my leg or anything around there, he just grabbed my arm and squeezed it, bruising almost, proving a point. That was the absolute last straw, and I knew I had to get away, no matter how badly he reacted. I think because I'd been so calm, and he read me pulling away as shyness, he let me go to the bar to get another drink. I took my purse out of my handbag, just the purse, so I hoped he'd think that I wouldn't leave without the rest of my stuff, and beelined to the bar. I quickly explained the situation to the bartender, told him I was scared, and asked if there was another way out or something. That was my second or third or fifth huge mistake of the night. The bartender laughed in my face like it was the funniest thing in the world and said,
"Just go, he probably won't follow you."
So I had to leave by the front door, up the stairs, in plain view from the booth, and run. I didn't look back at any point, but maybe the unhelpful bartender had kind of a point, since Luke either didn't follow me or wasn't able to keep up. Still, thanks for nothing, bartender. Looking back, I'm sure they were probably good friends. I blocked Luke on Facebook, but not before he got my number, and he texted me every day until I changed it. I still don't understand how someone my own age, with every advantage I had and some that I didn't, could turn into that monster. Old childhood friend turned racist fuck, let's never meet again.
Number 3.
I come from a small town in Canada. We only have 2 bars in the whole place, and they're frequented often by the locals in the winter and summer. Same old people that know each other. Some get along, some do not. In the summertime, we get a lot of cottagers and people from the city. We like to call them cityots because some of them can be really douchey, rude, and simply have no regard for politeness. Well, one night we were at the local bar and having a good time. I went there with a girlfriend of mine and her 2 friends whom I have never met. But they were really nice, just not my type. I see a Cadillac Escalade all black with chrome rims and a white Mercedes pull into the parking lot. I was kind of intrigued, so I made sure to take note on who walked in the door. I suddenly feel a touch on my shoulder, and it's a young Arabic man asking me to dance. I politely declined. I must say, I'm not racist, but he wasn't my type. I liked the metal look. He takes out his cell phone, takes a picture of me, the flash was a dead giveaway, and seemed to be sending it to someone. Within 5 minutes, those people who I saw pull in the parking lot earlier, they came inside. It was an older Arabic man. He looked about 60. He had 2 middle-aged men with him, and 1 younger male about my age, who I must say, he was pretty cute. I continued dancing with my friends on the dance floor, but couldn't get past a creepy feeling. I was being glared at. My friend tells me that those men are staring at me and pointing, and it's kind of freaky. I decided to get off the dance floor and go sit down with my friends and have some drinks. The older man came over to my table and tapped me on the shoulder and asked me to come over so he can talk to me. I walked over and he said that he wanted to introduce me to his son. He waved his son over and we shook hands and said hello. I asked him if there was any reason why he wanted me to meet his son, and he said I'm a very beautiful girl with nice hair and clothes, and that he wants me to date his son. I kindly said no thank you, I'm currently seeing someone at the moment. He kind of looked at me with a weird look of disappointment mixed with rage. He then put his arm around me and pulled out a wad of cash and said,
Come on, let us buy you a drink and talk to us more. You may want to leave that other man.
I looked over at my friends and they were waving me over. I said 1 minute and talked to this man a little more. Stupid me, I know, but I was curious at the time. I asked where they were from and they said Mississauga, and they were wondering if I wanted to go up to Ottawa and party for the weekend at their mansion. I declined and he kept pressuring me on his son. I finally got his arm from around me and walked over to my friends. They took a couple more pictures of me before leaving the bar. I thought that was really weird, like I'm being targeted for a kidnapping, or am I being shopped around to being someone's wife or something? Maybe a sex slave. I had no idea, but it was too weird for me. Last call hits, and we decide to grab our jackets at the coat check because it could be a very big line. We grab our jackets and wait outside for our taxis to come. Stupid people were jumping and pushing for cabs in front of the bar, so we decided to walk down to the other street and call one from there. We waited a few minutes, and who comes rolling around the corner? Those men in the bar. They have a 3rd car with them. My friend and I, the person I was seeing, and the 2 men that came with us were all freaked out, and they stood there blocking me from their view. They called me over to their car. I didn't go. They got out and were walking towards us, and my friend snapped pictures of them and said she also wrote down their license plates. They called her a whole bunch of hurtful names, got in their cars, and then drove off. I didn't go back to the bar for a while, but apparently there was a rumor going around to be careful because there are men trying to lure girls into the city with them. I don't know what they wanted from me. I don't know what they're doing with the pictures. I still don't know what to think.